Hey everybody, my name's Aaron. Welcome back to the channel. A few months ago, I put out a video about a Neo retro mechanical keyboard build. That is a keyboard that is made of all new components, but tries to emulate the style and feel of a retro keyboard. And what I came up with was this. This keyboard has that sound of an old Alps clicky keyboard, maybe from an Apple IIc or another keyboard that used those same key switches. And it has reproduction keycaps on it that make it look like a IBM terminal from the 1970s. I've been using this as my daily driver and it's been great, but it is kind of loud. And it's fairly bright. It tries to emulate the color scheme of an 80s 104 key keyboard. So this thing's been pretty nice, but I think it might be time for an update. Then recently at eWaste, I came across this authentic Cherry keyboard from 1979. It was meant to be sold as kind of a hobbyist keyboard, something you could use to create your own terminal or something like that. It has this great black styling, and the key switches aren't nearly as loud as the other ones. They're still pretty clickety-clack, but not too bad. And so that kind of inspired me to maybe take a second round at this for people that might not like all the noise. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to create a silent Neo retro mechanical keyboard. Try to make it as quiet as possible so that you don't annoy your family or your neighbors. That's coming up right now on the Retro Hack Shack. So again, here is the current keyboard that I've been using for the past few months since I made that last video on building a Neo retro keyboard, and it's been great. I really love this keyboard. It's a Keychron K2, I believe it was. Full-size keyboard. You got to have a full-size keyboard, I think, if you're doing a retro keyboard. Plus, I'm just used to this from so many days of using the 104 key keyboards that I did all through my early work years, etc. The only problem is it is quite loud. And I think back when I did my original video, I said something about my wife not minding this keyboard. My wife, who is noise sensitive for a while, she definitely prefers this particular sound of this key clickiness versus some of these other ones. And unfortunately, it turned out that after a few brief days of using this new keyboard, I quickly found out that that was not the case for my wife or my son. I love the clickiness. I love the tactile. I love the keys, especially. It's just been great. No problems whatsoever. And I also love the fact that this is hot swappable. So if I really wanted to, I could have just redone the key switches in this keyboard and gone for more of a silent setup here. But I thought I would take the opportunity and just create a whole new one, like I said. And plus, I wanted to upgrade this with some bells and whistles. This doesn't have RGB lighting, and it is a wired keyboard. So that's not a big problem because it's always sitting in front of my computer. I can plug it in, no big deals. If I'm going to go build out a whole new keyboard, I might as well go for all the bells and whistles. So it's RGB, Bluetooth, and some other extra features I'll go over in just a minute. And this is the new keyboard that I'm going with. It is, again, a Keychron. I just found the reliability and the ease of use of that other keyboard so well, and it was so well made. I thought, why screw up a good thing? Go with a known good quantity here, and this is still really cheap compared to some of the other ones that you can find out there in the marketplace. But this is a Keychron K10 Pro, and it does come with some additional features. So where this differs from my keyboard that I built last time is this one has QMK and VIA compatibility. So that means that you can quickly and easily from a browser on your computer, a browser page, you just open it up and you can quickly configure this, you can remap the keys any way you want. You can have multiple layouts, so you can hit a key combo and it'll switch the layout from one thing to another. But that's one of the differences. Again, I mentioned this is wired and wireless. It will allow you to pair up to 3 devices. So if you want to use this with your desktop computer and you also want to use it with your laptop, or you want to use it with a phone or a tablet or something like that, you can do that. It's got some additional stabilization, some screw-in stabilizers for some of the larger or wider keys, which is really nice. It does have, as this I alluded to up here, a 4,000 milliamp hour battery. So it should last, here it says, for up to 4 weeks. Even, this is when the backlights are disabled. With the backlights on, it drains it a little bit faster than that. Comes with a ton of different lighting effects. Again, you program this with the VIA program that's open source. And then it does have some additional foam built in as well, so you don't have to add that. I know there's videos out there that show, you can add tape to your the back of your PCB, and you can add foam and all kinds of other things. They've already done a really good job at building in some sound absorbing foam into the keyboard, which is going to make it so that I don't have to do as much work in making this keyboard as silent as possible. Okay, so let's do a quick unboxing now and see what this actually looks like on the inside. Comes with a nice quick start guide. It talks about having Windows and Mac keys that you can switch out. So I'll need to do, if I was keeping this with the stock keys that it comes with, I would have to switch those out, of course, because I'm not really a Mac user. The USB-C cable comes with a little screwdriver. These are the additional keycaps for Windows users. Here is a keycap puller and a key switch puller. Okay, let's get out the keyboard. It's in this nice, there's also a manual in the bottom, but this comes in this nice, everybody's been using this kind of it's just plastic, but I don't know what they do to it. It's brushed or something. It looks more professional for some reason. And a lot of the vendors have been using this with their stuff to make them look nicer. And there it is. There's the K10, Keychron K10 keyboard. Now this comes stock with whatever their brown switch is. It might be a Gatoron brown. I think on the website it says it's a Keychron brown switch, so that is a tactile switch. I went over a lot about key switch, different types of key switches and stuff in the previous video. So if you want to see that one, I'll link that in the description or up above. You can go do that. I'm not going to go back over it now. And plus there's lots of other videos out there on mechanical keyboards that you can go do some research on. The other reason I got this was because it was a black base. For the keycaps that I'm going to be going for, which are more of a darker color, I wanted to have the black base so that I have a light colored keyboard, a light noisy keyboard, and then I have this darker kind of midnight silent keyboard that'll be really nice and retro looking when I'm done with it. So yeah, I really like the look and feel of this. Let's go ahead and start tearing it apart. Now at this point you might be thinking, hey, I'd like to build my own keyboard from scratch, including the PCB. And for that, we should turn to today's sponsor, PCBWay. PCBWay offers inexpensive PCB manufacturing, assembly services, CNC machining, 3D printing, and more. In fact, they have a really cool project page, so let's hop on over and see if they have any mechanical keyboard projects that we can take a look at. And sure enough, right away I found this project by Mad Mod Labs, which is a really cool looking keyboard that he designed from scratch. And it talks about the description of what it is, even has a video here that'll walk you through everything. And you can get this PCB manufactured at PCBWay and follow along with the video to build your own. So if you're looking for another mechanical keyboard project, head on over to PCBWay. And I thank them for their support of the Retro Hack Shack. Okay, so I just wanted to quickly show you the software you need to be able to configure this keyboard. As I mentioned, it's called VIA, and it's all done via the web. Yeah, I guess that's where they got it maybe. But yeah, it's really simple to use, and you can change all kinds of stuff on the keyboard. So let me just show you real quick. Just go to usevia.app, and that'll load up the keyboard. Now, this one I've already connected, but if you don't have your keyboard connected, on that first page that flashed up real quick, there's a little thing that says activate. Hit that, little window pops up, choose your keyboard, say connect, and you're done. And it'll pop up again with this window, which shows you your keyboard, shows you your layout. It shows you which keyboard is connected. Oh, here we go. If I wanted to authorize a new keyboard, I could hit that one. This is what would pop up here. if you weren't already connected. And all you have to do is be connected via USB cable to your computer. It won't work over Bluetooth. And I wasn't able to get it to work on Linux, although I think I would if I spent some more time with it. I just didn't have time. So yeah, this is Windows 10 and it seems to work just fine. Anyway, I'm already connected. And then what you can do is you can go and program, whatever key you want. If I want this next key to be something else, I can just go ahead and pick what key I want, and then it'll change it to that key. And these are just the basic programming keys, on this level, but you can also go to keys for, adjusting the lighting, media keys. Like I think that button I just programmed here was supposed to be mute. So let's change that back. Now it's back to mute. You can define macros. Once you set up your macros, you can define, which macro that triggers. Different things like that. Custom stuff. You can fire up Cortana or Siri here. Just all sorts of stuff. So really simple and easy to use. You click on the key, click on the button you want to map to it, and you're done. And as you noticed up top here, there's different layers. So you can program, I'm on layer 0 right now, but you can program layer 1 to be something completely different. And you can switch that at any time using the keyboard functions. So you could have up to 4 different layouts for different things and easily switch between them at the touch of a button. Here's the macro area where you can go ahead and record macros. I'm not going to do that right now, but if you had a macro, several key presses in a row that you wanted to do, you can define those macros here. And then this is the lighting effect. But yeah, you can adjust the brightness, pick a different effect here. The one I have set up right now is a when you press a key, it actually triggers the lights to go out in all 4 directions, up, down, left, and right as you press a key. It's kind of cool. And then you can, of course, define the color and all that. And then when you're all done with your thing, if you want to, this is programmed in. As you type it, it automatically is programmed in. You don't have to save it or do anything. But if you want to save your layout for later and all your settings so that you don't lose them, or let's say you're getting a new keyboard or something like that, you can actually save your current layout. Just hit save and it comes up and says, what do you want to save it at? And it saves it as a JSON file, which is really nice, kind of more of a standard configuration file these days. So yeah, that's it. Pretty simple and easy to use, but highly configurable. And you can change everything you want about your custom keyboard. So when I ordered the key switches, a lot of them came with a dual tool like this, which is both a keycap puller and a key switch puller, which is really nice to have in one tool. So you don't have to go looking for one. If you go grab this one, it has both tools all in one package, which is nice. So now I've got like about a dozen of these keycap pullers of various other accessories that go with these things. But just real quick to review what I talked about in the last video. Again, not going to go into this in great detail. Need to get the switches off, need to get the keycaps out so I can put some new ones into test. To do that, you just take the end with these 2 little bars here, put that over the key, and it should kind of snap down over the key. If it doesn't, you can turn it to the side, rotate it a little bit, just so that both bars are underneath the keycap. Then you just pull that up. There we go. And it pulls the keycap right off without scraping, bending, using any screwdrivers. You wouldn't want to do that. This tool makes it really easy to pull those off, and then they're easy to put back on as well. And then for the key switches underneath, again, as I mentioned in the last video, there's 2 little tabs at the top and bottom of these. So to get this out, you position the other end of the tool that looks like a little grabber, or I don't know what that looks like. But it has these 2 little ends on that go in so they can depress the top and the bottom of the key switch itself. So you put those in, it usually makes a little noise. Whoops, pull up, and you get your key switch out, maybe. Come on. My fat fingers can't get it out. There it is. And that's what it looks like after you pull the keycap out. And it's pretty easy to get these back in because the key switches themselves have those 2 prongs. So it's pretty easy to orient these the right way. And I like to stick these in and kind of get them to rest in the socket like that, so that they're just resting there. And then you just press down, little click, and they go back into place. Pretty easy. So what I did was I bought a bunch of different key switches so that I could pick the one that sounded to me like the most silent in this keyboard. So let me just go over the different ones that I purchased in case you want to emulate this or you like one silent key over another silent key. The first one I got is this one here. It came highly recommended. It is the Gazoo Boba U4. And sometimes you'll just see these referred to as the Boba or the Boba U4. But these are silent keys. They come highly recommended. The top of the keycap can be either clear for RGB or it can be a cream color. They also come in different weights. This is the 68 gram weight, but they have a lighter key switch. And that gram is just how hard the force that you need to press on it, you know, how much resistance there is there. But this is kind of the middle of the road, 68 gram. I know a lot of people like the 66 gram. There's also, I think, a 70 gram. So a lot of different options that you can pick with this Gazoo Boba U4. The other one's not as many options. So this pink one here is the Elias Silent, also highly recommended by a lot of channels that do this kind of stuff. There's the Kale or Kayla. I still don't know how to say that. I use the same switch as Kale, Kayla, whatever in my other keyboard. But yeah, this is their box silent browns. And by the way, one thing I wanted with these was not only a silent switch, but also a tactile silent switch, because I wanted there to be a little bit of bump. So all of these are tactile or have at least some tactile feel to them. And they are also rated as silent key switches. The last one here is the Blue Silent. It has a nice blue stem in there. And yeah, Blue Silent V2 is the last one I want to test. So I went ahead and installed these in the same order that I just told you. So let me get these key switches back, or the keycaps put back in place, and then we'll do a little sound test and you can see which ones you think are the most quiet when they are stock out of the box with no adjustments to them. Okay, so I'm just going to hang my mic over the keys and try to keep it about the same position here. So these are the, first up is the stock brown switches that came with them. Okay, now let's move on to the Gazoo Boba U4s. These are the ones that I have the most hope in because they really have a lot of good ratings for these silent switches. So these are the Gazoo Boba U4s. Really, really silent there. Let's move on to the Elias Silence. And then the Kale Box Silent Browns. And then last but not least, the Blue Silent V2s. Okay, so I don't know how this is actually going to sound over YouTube, but I can tell you in person, the ones that to my ear are the quietest are these Boba switches, the Boba U4s. They are an order of, well, I shouldn't say an order of magnitude, but noticeably quieter than the other ones. From a tactile perspective, though, if you like tactile keys and you really like that kind of more of a heavier key, I would definitely go with the Blue Silent. They're fairly quiet, but they have a really nice heavy bump on them. So if you like that kind of thing and you don't mind slightly more noise, again, I'm going for the most silent build possible here that I can think of. But yeah, these Blue Silents here have just a great kind of a heavier tactile feel. For this build, before I do anything else, I'm going to be focusing on these Boba U4s as my key switch of choice. Now, we can take this even further by using some dampeners, basically some O-rings that you can put on these and see if that'll make them even quieter. And we can also do some manual lubrication. I'm not sure if these were lubricated in the factory before they were sent out, but a lot of times if you add just a little bit of lubrication, it'll go a long way. Okay, for the next step, I want to test trying out the dampener rings, and this is what they look like. You can get these from a lot of different places. You can get them in packs of like 100 or something like that. They're basically just little rubber or silicone rings that will, again, help with making the keys even more quiet than they already are. So the way that you use these is you take your key switch here, and as you can see, it's got a round housing on the inside, and you just take the little ring, put it on there like that. It doesn't have to go down all the way because it'll go down when you press down on the key. So now that little dampener is on there, and we can install these and see if there's any difference between the non-dampened keys and the dampened keys. Okay, so once again, I'm going to hold the mic over these keys. I just did 2 of them because I'm not sure really this is going to make any difference at all. But I just did the first 2. The keys Q and W are the dampened ones. So let me hold this mic over and we'll just test and see if it makes any difference at all. Now keep in mind that these keys, the reason they're silent is they have built-in silicone, usually dampening material inside the key switch itself. So that does most of what makes these silent. So adding these O-rings, these dampeners, may not do anything, but let's just see if it makes any difference. Pretty quiet. And here are the 2 that I put the dampeners on. Yeah, so I can't find any difference. Actually, I don't hear any difference whatsoever between the ones with the O-rings on and the ones without. In fact, if anything, the ones with the O-rings, the dampeners, are maybe even slightly louder than the other ones. So this is not going to be worth my time to put these on every key. So I am going to skip this step, and we'll move on to adding manual lubrication to see if we can make these already very silent keys any more silent. So before I go into lubing the key switches, I did want to talk at least about these kits. You can buy them on Amazon for like 20 bucks. And if you were doing this once or just starting out, this would probably be a good option to get. It comes with this template that you can see down here where you can place the different components of the switch after you take it apart. And that's really nice because what you don't want to do is have these things fall on the floor once you've put some grease on them and have them pick up all sorts of, in this case, dog hair or penny hair. It also comes with some lubricating grease. I have no idea what kind this is though, and it doesn't feel like there's a whole lot in here. It comes with the O-rings or the dampening rings that I mentioned before. It also comes with this nice little toolkit, another dual-ended keycap puller and key switch puller. Comes with a little tool that you can use to pick up things like the key switches and things like that, little parts that are going to be coming out of these key switches. That makes it really nice and easy to get things precisely where you want them to be. It comes with a pair of tweezers. This is the tool that's used for getting the key switches apart. It also has a brush, which I will be using to apply the grease to the key switches. And also included were some other little tidbits. There's a couple of cleaning cloths. Those microfiber cleaning cloth things. This is I don't know, like a plastic sheet, I guess you could put down to protect your work surface or something. Make sure that everything stays nice and clean. And then this is a little brush for your keyboard. Now the lubricant I'm going to be using is this 3203 Tribosis lubricant, and it came highly recommended, especially for tactile switches. So on the key switch separator, there you can see there's 2 little tools, 2 individual tools, and they're a little bit different. This one is for the Kale switches. They have a different mechanism that holds the plastic together, so they have a little bit different tool to separate them. And then this is for most of the other switches. They have 4 distinct little tabs on them, and that need to be released in order to get into the switch. And the way you do this is pretty easy. You just need to set the key switch down on top of the separator to make sure it fits nicely. And then you can just push down on it. Let's push down on the stem like this. And there we go. It's off. That just helps spread out those tabs, and it doesn't seem to break them or damage them. I guess I'm used to working with brittle plastic on these old computers that I work on, but yeah, it just opens them right up. You can take the top off, and then you can see the inside here. We've got the stem, and then we've got the spring underneath. So here's the stem. I took it out, and what we're going to be lubricating is, like I said, just the stem, and the pieces that I'm going to be lubricating are like that top rail right there, above where my fingernail is. The side rails, like so this on each side, the side rails, and then that back rail up there again where that piece is there. What I'm not going to do is I'm not going to be lubricating this little bump right there, because that's what provides the tactile bump. And if you lubricate that, it will pretty much negate any tactile bump or most of the tactile bump that you feel on the switch. It'll just be too slippery to make that nice, to give you that nice tactile feel. So I'm going to be very careful not to put any lubrication there, just on the sides and on the front and back on this top part here and here. So this is where this little grabber tool can come in handy. It's very difficult with my big fingers to hold the switch or hold the stem and put the lubricant on. So I'm using this for that. And you really just want a tiny bit of lubricant on your brush. So put a little bit on there, wipe it off, and then just kind of lube where I mentioned, trying to be really careful not to avoid those little bumps there. And as with other forms of lubrication, a little goes a long way. Don't need much at all. There we go. That's it. Now this is ready to go back in the housing. Other videos that I've seen have told you to lube the inside of the switch, either down in here after you take the spring out to lube down in there, or lube around the shaft here on the bottom part of the stem. I'm not going to do that because my feeling is that the lube that you put on that, I mean, it may make a difference in some cases, but I think the real places you need to lube are the ones I mentioned. I think that's going to have a negligible effect on the sound of this spring. So I'm not going to go crazy and put lube everywhere else. First of all, it's not a good idea to overload the lube because it can gum up the mechanism. And I just don't think it's necessary. And then that's it. I'm going to put them back. It's kind of a speed lube method that I've seen other people do, and I think it's going to work great. So let's try it out. So one thing I definitely want to do is lubricate the springs. And to do this, it's pretty easy. I'm using a different type of lubrication on these. This is GPL 105, it's called. This is a much thinner lubricant than the one I'm using for the stems on the key switches. And all you need to do for this is grab yourself a little baggie. I've got a very little baggie here. You don't need a big one because these don't take up much room. And you just take these springs, put them in the baggie, and you can do all of these at once. I've got 4 here to show you. I wouldn't normally do this with just 4, but just doing it for example purposes. I've got the 4 springs in the little baggie, and probably 4 or 5 drops of this stuff will be enough, but I'm just going to put 1 or 2 drops right on these springs since I've only got 4 of them. 1, 2, 3, that's more than enough because I've only got 4 springs. Then I'm going to leave some air in the bag. I don't know if you remember back in the day, shake and bake. This is kind of like shake and bake where you put the seasoning and the flour and stuff in the bag and season your chicken and put it in the oven. That's what this is. In fact, I have so few springs in here, I don't have much room at all. Let me put some air in this little baggie. There we go. I'm just going to shake these springs around and hopefully get them coated with that lubrication I put in there. Okay, so these springs are well lubed, and you can either use your tool or clean fingers. I don't want to set these down because like I said, I don't want to get penny hairs on any of these. But then these can just go right back in the key switches. So reassembling these is pretty easy. The bump that I said not to get the lubricant on goes towards the leaf spring that's in the switch. So you want to orient it that way. There's a little post on that stem we saw before. That goes on the spring. and then you just need to put the top of the cap back on. Lining these up to get them to snap back together is pretty easy. There's a little window down here in the bottom part of the case of the key switch, and there's also a little window here in what is the bottom part of the top part of the case. So you know that that goes on this way. And you just line those up. Sorry for my hands being in the way. I'll get rid of that in a minute. There we go. You just line those up, make sure everything is in place, and it should just snap together. There we go. Nice and quiet. One more thing to note, since you're handling the keycaps a lot, it's a good idea to check the bottom again, because as you can see, I folded over one of the pins, and this would not have worked if I had put that back in this condition. So I need to straighten out that pin, then I can put it back in the keyboard. One more thing I did want to mention are these overlays, or what are essentially gaskets that you can use, which is another dampening thing that has become popular lately. And it's very hard to see, but each one of these little squares is basically a cutout. I can press this out of this sheet. I have a whole sheet of them here. And it would become a square gasket that would then fit around or in between the bottom half of the key switch case and the top half of the key switch case. And when that is important is when you might have a key switch from your manufacturer where it's a little bit loose, and you can tell it's a little bit loose if you move it back and forth and the top moves independently of the bottom, right? So if there was a little bit of space in between here because of manufacturing defects or just your particular key, if that was loose, then that could also create some noise. Now, these are very tight. They don't move at all. I've checked them in the keyboard after I've installed them, and the top and the bottom are very tight and they don't move. But if that was not the case, they might make noise when you press the key switch. So you might need these overlays. I don't need them, but I at least wanted to bring it up so that you know that they are available if you want to go that route. Okay, so let's see if lubing the switches makes any noticeable difference. Up here in the top row, 1 through 4, are the factory stock non-lubed switches. And then in the QWER part of QWERTY here is the lubed switches. So let's just do a quick sound test. Okay, so I don't know if you could hear that. I could definitely hear a difference. It's not extreme. There's not an extreme amount of difference. I think these switches are just already so quiet that even adding the, manually adding the lube and getting these things about as perfect as they can be isn't making a huge difference. It does make the action a little bit smoother, which I kind of like, actually. The tactile bump is still there, but the travel is a bit smoother. Really, really small things, though. I mean, nothing big enough that, I would go crazy over it. The question is it worth it? I don't know. I am trying to get the quietest keyboard possible, so boy, I don't think it's worth it in this case. Maybe for the other switches, if we were working on those other ones that I showed before, maybe those would have a bigger differential between the lubed and non-lubed. But for my time to go through here and lube 108 switches on this keyboard, I don't think it's worth it. So I'm going to say good enough without the lube. That would take me probably a couple hours to do all of the keys at least. And, I may drop some. Like I said, I may get something in there, the grease is sticky. I might get something that's like probably not worth the risk and not worth my time to do it. But keep this in mind if you're trying to make a silent keyboard, because with other key switches, it may make a bigger difference. Okay, one more note about these Gazoo Boba U4s that I got, especially this particular one with the clear RGB top and the 68 gram force. They are very difficult to find. I was able to find some other versions of these. There's a black top version. There's a opaque top version. If you are looking for this particular switch, for whatever reason, they're out of stock everywhere. I had to order these from AliExpress, and I feel like they're either genuine or they are really good ripoffs, because they do sound and work just as advertised in some of the other videos that I've watched. So yeah, just be aware you may end up paying a little bit more for these in the near term until they build their stocks back up, if you want this particular switch. Okay, time to look at the keycaps I got. Now, just as a reference, these are the keycaps that kind of inspired me. I knew I wasn't going to get something exactly like this because, you know, this is meant for a terminal and, you know, they've got special characters and things like that up here. But I did want something with rather large print in the middle of the keys. And of course, I wanted a profile that was similar to this. But when I started looking, I started to see some really cool designs. And so I went with something I liked even better. I ended up finding these keycaps on Etsy, although later I realized that the seller was just drop shipping these from AliExpress. So I would check AliExpress, Amazon, and custom keyboard sites like Drop to find a good selection of retro-looking keycaps. You just have to match up and make sure you understand the profiles, and what profile you want, hopefully, and then that'll kind of help you make your decision between the profile and the look and feel. You should be able to find something that suits your needs. So let's go ahead and open this up. This is from Day E Keycaps, and let's take a look and see what these look like. There we go. You can see, hopefully there's not too much reflection there. These are a yellow and black scheme. So I hope this goes well with the keyboard. But when I saw this, I just really liked it. The keycap profile is great. They looked really good online, so I had my hopes up. And I kind of like this kind of dark typewriter-y key feel or look and feel. Yeah, just so you can take a look at this. I mean, I know the orange isn't going to be for everyone, but they're called Coffee, I think, is the name of this. I think because it may look like this key is black. It's actually not. It's a little bit of a grayish, brownish key. And I think that's what really appealed to me, you know, like the keys that you might have seen on the Commodore 64 or some old terminals. You know, they weren't usually black. They were usually kind of like a gray color, gray-brown color. So that's what kind of drew me to this. But these are double shot keys. You can see they've got a nice orange on the inside, which makes up the lettering there on the front. And yeah, I really like them. We'll see how they look in the keyboard. I mean, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I'm not too sure, but yeah, I'm going to go ahead and get these installed in the keyboard. We'll do a little video magic and skip over all that boring installation of the keycaps. This keycap set also contained the UK layout keys. So like you have the 2 here with the quotation mark above it. What's cool about that is a lot of older keyboards actually had the quote mark, even here in North America, above the 2 key. And yeah, so you get a little retro with it and use that 2 key and remap your keyboard to also have the quotation there if you wanted it. But yeah, they just have these alternate key sets. They even have a 00 here down here that you can use. And then they also have these special keys here that, like, you know, a little robot, a spaceship. So I don't know, I might use some of these cool special keys too, someplace on the keyboard as well. Hey guys, just one note as I'm kind of jamming out in the background here to some yacht rock as I put these keys in. But I just really wanted to show you something else in case you're not used to this type of profile. This is a cherry profile, and you can see how the keys, these are all page down keys that were included in this keycap set. There's a reason why I bought it with 147 keys, and that's because there's a lot of options. So you could put the page down key in just about any of the bottom 4 rows, and it does matter because, as you can see, hopefully, the angle on these keys, each one of these keys is different. This one is for the QWERTY row of keys. This one is for the next one down, the next one down, and the next one down. So depending on where you wanted to put your page down key, it's important to pick the right angle in the profile, the right key in that spot in the profile, so that it lines up with all the other keys. In my case, I want to put the page down key in the same row that the QWERTY roll is. And so one easy way to tell is just to grab another key that you know goes in that row. In this case, I picked out this P key. And I can see that the P key actually matches this profile. So I know that I need to use this one because it's in the same row as the P. So just a quick note on selecting these different keys when you have multiples. If you get one in the wrong spot, it's going to feel really, really weird. All right, well, here it is. Just one keycap left. And there we go. It's all finished. You didn't have to watch me place every key. Aren't you glad? But this is what it looks like. And I've got to say, it's not bad. I was honestly, to be completely honest, when I opened up that keycap box, I was a little worried because the orange was a little brighter than I expected to see. And you may still think it's bright. It is bright. There's no getting around it. But when I opened that up, it was a little bit more jarring than I had anticipated just from viewing this online. However, now that I have everything together, it looks pretty nice. And I was worried that it would somehow clash. It's a little bit off color from the base. It doesn't match, of course. I wasn't really expecting it to match, but I was just worried that the difference between the color of the case and the color of the keycaps would be, I don't know, somehow off-putting, I guess, but it really isn't. Now that everything is together and I can see it all in place in this keyboard, I'm actually really digging this quite a bit. Now, orange isn't going to be everybody's color. These style of keys aren't going to be everybody's color, but I really like it. I love how big the lettering is on these keys, just like old school, Commodore PETs or Tandy computer of the day. They all had bigger lettering on them and it was nice and centered. So I don't know. I just really, really like this. A couple of the things that I noticed when putting this in and I didn't notice at first was instead of having a Windows key or an Apple key, they have a code key. I love that they have a code key instead. That's really cool. Another thing I like up here is instead of having the slash, the star, and the I guess minus is minus, but they have the actual division symbol and the multiplication symbol nice and big on those keys. So I really like that too. And I decided to put in these wacky keys up here. I'm going to use these for media keys. So one will be play, stop, or play, pause, and probably like a next song kind of button or something like that up here. I can reprogram those, of course, to be whatever I want, but I put those wacky keys up there. It looks kind of cool. And each of the function keys does have a alternate function like play and pause and stop, or turn the volume up or turn the brightness up on the LEDs behind the keys. So what I might do is I'm thinking about maybe making a legend that goes up top, like an old school legend like they used to have for WordPerfect or something like that. Thinking about putting one of those up top and affixing it to the keyboard with those functions as well. I don't use the function keys and the media keys all that much, to be honest, so I don't really need them, but maybe I can make it look kind of cool and kind of retro as well. And the feel of the keys. Now, I will say I'm waiting for the rest of my Boba U4s. I don't have all of them yet. So I'm waiting for the rest of those to come in. But while I do, I just have to say the deep well here for fingers in the keycaps is really nice to type on. I don't mind it at all. You definitely know that you're on a key and not in the middle of two keys. There's no getting it confused here. Very much like those old terminal keys. But I will say, as I was putting this together, the silent keys are dramatically more silent than the stock brown tactile keys that came with the keyboard. I mean, just listen to this. I mean, you can hardly hear these keys over here. Let's listen again. It's like they disappear into the background. They're not even there. So really, really soft and light keys. I'm really happy with these, and I hope that everyone else in my family is happy with them as well. Now I have a silent option, and when everybody else is out of the house or goes on vacation, I can pull out my other Neo Retro keyboard with the nice clicky sounds and enjoy it to my heart's content. Of course, the real test is to see what my family thinks about this new silent keyboard. Here's the...
yes.
You don't like that?
Right. Correct.
Okay. Here's the new one. I only have a few buttons on here working so far. Ready? Oh, here's the regular buttons of this keyboard. Better than that. Here's the regular keyboard because I don't have the click, and here's the new keys.
Nice! Yay! Yay! That's
better?
Hallelujah! That's a lot better.
Well, what do you think about this Neo Retro keyboard? I think it's pretty cool. And I like having not only the silent option, but also the option to have rainbow LEDs if I want to, and be able to connect to Bluetooth. So if I decide that I don't like the silent keys, I can always switch them out for something else. Maybe go with something in a more linear feel or a tactile feel. Who knows? The world is my oyster, as they say, and my wife hates that expression. Anyway, what do you think? Leave some comments down below. Do you like the keyboard color scheme? Do you like the silent options? Are you going to try to lube all your keys on your mechanical keyboard? I'd love to find out and get some more comments and suggestions from people that have done this. I'm sure a lot more than I have. So maybe creating a keyboard out of all new parts isn't your thing. Maybe you'd like to take an old keyboard like a Model M or an Apple Macintosh keyboard and hook that up to your Windows 10 or 11 machine or current Macintosh. Well, you can do that, and I showed you how on a video about a year or so ago. I'll link to that up above and down below in the description if you want to check out that option. There's something for everybody when it comes to keyboards. I do want to say thank you to all my patrons who support the channel. Without their help and support, this would not be possible. So until next time, thanks for watching. Patrons receive ad-free and early access to content after the episode commentary, and of course, your name in the credits. If you liked that episode, here's a few more you might enjoy, and I thank you for your support.
End of line.